Today's story is the theft of Thor's hammer. When Thor woke up in the morning, the first thing he did was reach for his hammer. But one morning, the hammer was gone. Thor jumped to his feet and tore at his hair and tugged at his beard and bellowed, "Loki, come here!" When Loki came, Thor whispered close to his ear, "My hammer has been stolen." Loki turned pale. He knew that Thor's hammer must be found before the Jotuns heard of its loss and gathered to attack Asgard. "Ask Freya to lend me her swift falcon wings, and I will fly off and look for the thief," said Loki. He was in a trustworthy mood just then. Together they rushed to Freya's hall. She also turned pale when she heard the terrible news. "I would gladly entrust my falcon wings to Loki, even if they were made of gold," she cried. "Only be quick and find Thor's hammer." Like an arrow, Loki flew off. When he came to Jotunheim, he saw the Jotun Thrym sitting on a hillock, plaiting the manes of his horse mares with ribbons of gold. He was in a very merry mood, and when he saw Loki, he greeted him politely. "How are the Aesir? How are the elves? And what might your errand be today?" he said, and made a show of good manners. Such smooth words from an uncouth Jotun made Loki suspicious, but he returned the greeting just as politely and asked if Thrym, by any chance, might happen to know something about Thor's hammer. "I stole it while he slept," the Jotun said with a leer, "and what is more, I've hidden it 8 miles underground. I will give it back to him, but only if Freya becomes my bride. I have plenty of gold, herds of black cows, and all these fine mares. The only thing I want that I do not have is beautiful Freya." Swiftly, Loki flew back to Asgard, where Thor and Freya were waiting for him. "Hurry," he said to Freya, "put on your bridal veil. The Jotun Thrym has Thor's hammer, and he won't give it back until you go to Jotunheim and take him for your husband." "Never!" cried Freya, huffing and puffing so hard in her rage that her necklace broke and flew from her bosom. Never shall it be said that Freya was so lovelorn she took a Jotun for a husband. At the mere thought, angry golden teardrops sprang from her eyes. The other Aesir were now called in, and the goddesses too. They all agreed Freya must not marry a Jotun, but that Thor must have his hammer back. They thought hard. At last, Heimdall spoke up. "You must go yourself, Thor," he said. "You must wear Freya's wedding dress and play the blushing bride." Thor protested loudly, but all in vain. The Aesir hid his sturdy legs beneath a trailing skirt, put a belt with dangling keys around his waist, and covered his chest with jewels in Freya's sparkling necklace. Then they tied his hair in a top knot and hid his face behind the bridal veil. He was a dazzling bride. "A bride needs a maid," said Loki. "I will be his maid." So Loki was also dressed up as a girl. Thor's goats were fetched, and off they went in Thor's cart, rumbling over the clouds. Thrym, the Jotun, heard them coming from afar and cried, "Quick, cover benches and floor with fresh straw. Prepare my wedding feast. Thor has sent my bride." They were seated at the table, and the feast began. Right away the bride ate all the sweets set aside for the women. Then she devoured 8 salmon and finished the meal with a whole roasted steer. Thrym gaped. "Never, ever did I see such a gluttonous bride," he said. "The poor girl has tasted nothing for 8 long days," said Loki the maid. "She has been pining away for you." Oh, hearing this, Thrym wanted to kiss her and lifted her veil. But when the eyes of his bride met his, he staggered halfway across the hall as if struck by a thunderbolt. "Why do Freya's eyes glow as red as embers?" he gasped. That is because she hasn't slept for 8 nights longing for you," said Loki, the fast-thinking maid. "Hurry," cried Thrym, all aflame. "Proceed with the wedding ceremonies. Bring up Thor's hammer and put it on Freya's lap, and let us make our vows of marriage." The hammer was placed in the lap of the bride, who now sat modestly in her seat. Thor's heart laughed within him as his hand closed on the handle. He rose to his feet and wriggled his eyebrows. The veil fell down, and with flashing eyes he lifted his hammer and threw it. Thrym and all his kin came to a rapid end, smashed by the thunderbolt, and the great hall lay in rubble. Thor and Loki jumped into the billy goat cart and drove back to Asgard. Now that Thor held his hammer in his hand, they did not much mind the women's skirts about their knees. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed, and all the Aesir drew a sigh of relief.